Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. So today I would like to present my presentation entitled The Social Science and the Second Language Curriculum. So we are going to the first slide. The study of society and culture. The relation between the social sciences and language teaching have developed differently from the relation between language teaching and linguistics itself. In the 50s and 60s, an anthropological and sociological view of language in connection with culture and society began to influence language teaching theory. In 19th century, modern language teaching was preparatory to the study of literature, and therefore the main emphasis was upon formal language study, particularly upon its written form, not the spoken one. And unfortunately, in the end of 19th century, language learning in the classroom continued to be conceived as a training rather than as a real communication or as an introduction to a foreign society. But um, since the reform movement in the last century and even before, language teaching theorists repeatedly stated that an important purpose of language learning was to learn about country and its people, and also the culture. For example, British report in the modern studies using the term modern studies, not simply using the modern language. In other words, the study itself means or related or referred to a country and its culture, a literature, and its society, not the study of language alone. In German, teaching of culture or Kulturkunde was developed after World War One. So German educators advocate Kulturkunde in mother tongue education as the unifying principle binding together with the teaching of German subjects like German literature, German language, German history, or geography of Germany. This is the main reason why the German army and the German population are very nationalist, or we can call it ultranationalist and pro to their country. So from this example, we can learn that language learning must be in a context by studying the culture, the people, and the civilization from which the language is originates. Moreover, during this period, increasing efforts were made by European school system to back up classroom language teaching by personal links with foreign countries through student travel, teacher and student exchange, and the pen friendship across nation. Well, the primary purpose of this scheme was to help students to become proficient in the language. The advocates of resident abroad were also conscious the fact that they stay in a country in a worldwide will give the students a direct experience of the foreign country or foreign culture and its society. Anthropology and sociology might offer a theoretical framework for teaching about culture and society. Thus, in the post-war world, the idea of study language combined with a study of culture and society was familiar enough to most of the theorists, such as stated by Brooke, language and culture are not separable, and also by Rivers, language cannot be separated completely from the culture in which it is deeply embedded. Uh, so it's mean that we cannot separate the culture itself when we are learning one or more languages. In its development, learning related to anthropology and sociology in relation in teaching to teaching English has several main obstacles, namely the manufactured from culture that are not managed properly. That's why Nostran 1974 was who has been strongly aware of the problem. Converting the sociology and anthropological concept into manageable sim has involved an emergent model based on Talcott persons, analysis of sociocultural system. The first we can see it's a culture. It's about dominant values, habits of thought, and assumption, and so on. And second one is society. It's related with social institution, the regulation, the norm, the family, religion, economic, occupational, organization, political, and judicial system, and so on. And the third one is ecology. Population relationship with its subhuman environment, attitudes toward nature, exploitation with the nature, or use of the natural product technology, and so on. And the last one is the individual. What is a given person do with the shared pattern, like conforming, rebelling, exploiting, loving someone, innovating, or the integration of personality, which is interpersonal and intrapersonal. And the last one is status by age and sex or gender. And the next one is about the study of language in its social context. In the past, the selection of a standard or norm in teaching foreign language tends to be an absolute term. In many European countries, it is uncommon for teachers of English as second language to insist on a teaching what they often naively refer to as Oxford English or the King English or Britain English, and they reject indigenous American English as less pure English. That's why nowadays there are several criteria for pedagogical norms in learning language. The first is the variety of language learned must be acceptable to a native speaker as appropriate for a non-native to use. Second one, it must facilitate communication between native speakers and the learner. The third, it must be adapted to the probable use of the language by the learner. And the last one, it should be also make the learning task initially simple without distorting the language use. And the last but not and the last is as the learner progresses, the social meaning of different language varieties or of a particular features in the language should increasingly have a place in the teaching of the language. And the next one is about communicative language teaching. Uh, it is an approach to language teaching that emphasizes interaction as a means and end goal of learning, especially in learning English. This is closely related to the social function of language. It is to communicate with the others. So in English teaching, should focus should focus on functional and communicative language. The purpose of this approach model is actually aimed at the concept of needs needed by language learners, especially in the social context of society, which is communication with others. And some theorists, since the last decade, have attempted to come closer to the reality of language use. Henceforth, the use language were to be specified in social setting much more precisely. Teaching materials and techniques which are based on sociolinguistic principles should usually identify learners in a specific role of language use. For example, as a tourist or university students or migrant workers, often the interactions are specified, such as shop assistant with a customer, foreign traveler with a policeman, physician with a patient, and so on. And situation of language use are indicated and sometimes described in a detailed scenario, such as visiting a city, arriving at a hotel, reading academic papers, participating in a seminar discussion, asking a neighbor for help, visiting a doctor's surgery, and so on. And speech acts are analyzed which regularly occur in the given situation such as introducing oneself, inquiring, gathering information, asking permission, asking for help, giving reasons or explanation, and so on. And then the learners are usually invited to enter into the situation so that they become a participant, such as role playing, simulation, and problem solving, and so on. Also, the similar principle have been applied to testing process. The aim is not to test only formal correctness, but also social appropriateness in a given context. The test item usually define a situation, let's say a crowded bus, a role or the roles of the two or more interactants, or the participants, such as travelers in the crowded bus, and a problem requiring a speech act, for instance, an appropriate and also in the polite manner. And the test item usually consists of response from the learner is expected to make in the form of spoken or written form, such as multiple choice, it's okay, or the portfolio, such as essay about the conversation between two people. Sociolinguistics has placed language and language learning into a social context of interaction, and non-analytical approach to language learning are based on the principle that the learner must become a participant in real-life context of language use as a condition of effective language learning. So we as the learner need to interact with other people. So we use the language not only in the classroom or not only learning about the theory of the language, but also we need the practical language that we can use in the daily life or the non-analytical non-analytical situation. When we are talking about analytical and non-analytical approach in learning English, so Allen in 1918 proposed the multi-level curriculum as stated or as we can see in the table. This model expressed the view that a language curriculum must have a structural level, as recognized in most conventional language programs, but the structural component by itself is insufficient. Discourse analysis and speech act theory provide the basis for a second level component of the curriculum. Both of this level is a must, however, become integrated at a third level where the language is used instrumentally in a real life activities in communication. I mean, according to this conception, the language curriculum must have all three components, of course. In other words, our curriculum should be based both on a formal and functional or practical analysis, at the same time offer opportunities for the participation in a real-life situation and communication, which by its very nature, it is stated as non-analytical. Other frameworks stated that the use of socio-cultural should be considered in curriculum development also. In other words, we are saying that language teaching can and should approach language learning objectively and analytically through the study of and the study and practice of structural, functional, and socio-cultural aspects, as we can see in the table, and it should offer opportunities to live the language as a personal experience through direct language use in a contact with the target language community. In this is learning English is not only about the theory but also in the practicality is experimenting or experiential aspect for communication in the society or communication in the community of civilization. So that's all from me for the presentation today. Thank you for staying here. Thank you for watching. I hope you understand about my explanation. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.